Hello, welcome to Strictly Money at the News Forum, where all voices matter. I'm Saijal Patel. A recent report from Food Banks Canada has revealed more Canadians than ever need access to food. So far this year, there have been 1.5 million visits to food banks across the country, the highest usage on record. And it underscores the severity of food insecurity in light of rising expenses. Cheryl Keddy-Scott is Executive Director at Village of Hope, and she joins me now. Cheryl, great to have you on.
Thank you so much for having me.
These are shocking numbers, 1.5 million, and yet we probably shouldn't be shocked given that food prices are up, rent is up, gas is up, and people are having to make choices between eating and having a roof over their head.
Yeah, it's really escalated. We've seen an increase over the last 5 years a little bit, but this year it's been definitely significant. We noticed it at our food bank. A lot of people think compared to the city, to the country, and everything else, rural versus urban, the differences, but we're all affected. We're all affected by it.
Yeah. So my understanding, Cheryl, was that visits to the food bank was typically tied to unemployment, and it was often the last resort. That's changed, though, hasn't it?
Yeah, when you look at the history of food banks, they began, evolving around, the Depression years and everything else. And now you look at, we're in 2022. Who would think that, I'm serving, in our West Niagara, up to 1,500 individuals a month. 72% of everybody who visits our food bank is actually working, but
Wow.
there's just not enough money at the end with, like you say, with the rising costs. And it's not even that, some of them are still making, fairly decent money, $20 an hour or that, but just with the cost of food and everything. And when you have a couple of children on top of that, it's impossible to make ends meet. So they have to visit us, which is sad.
Yeah, and I understand students, a lot more students than before.
Yeah, when they're coming to we see it, some students even living in their cars to make ends meet and that, their parents send them here and they go to, different universities. I think it's more prevalent in larger cities like Toronto and that. But yeah, it's devastating. It affects everybody. We've seen through COVID, COVID affected the rich, poor, everybody in between. And as we move beyond that, I was very optimistic thinking, wow, time to move forward. And yet we've really hit a wall with that.
Cheryl, how has rising expenses affected your food bank and also donations?
Dramatically, the people normally that would donate, 2 bags of food are now donating one. I think people are definitely a little bit more wise shopping, buying items when they're on sale and everything. But it also comes to our donors. The donors that normally would donate maybe $100 now donate the $50. And we've even seen it that some donors on occasion are now coming to sit at my desk saying, Cheryl, you know what? You've been so good to us, but we need help now. I'm laid off. My hours have been reduced. And with the rising costs going up, that now they are asking for help. So it's definitely been a full circle.
Wow. I want to highlight this because I understand that you run your food bank differently and you ask for a budget. Why?
I've been doing this for about 36, 37 years. And after about 15 years of helping people in the community and beyond, I really realized, what are we doing? We're giving out food. Yes, we're definitely affecting food insecurity and ensuring no one goes hungry. But, I started seeing families more with us for like a year or 2 years. I thought, how can we move beyond this? So about 10, 12 years ago, I said, we need to start sitting down and going a little bit deeper with people, seeing why they're coming to our food banks and what can we do to move them beyond. So that's when we introduced our budgeting. Within 3 months of registering at Village of Hope, everybody has to sit down with myself personally, whether it's at their kitchen table or whether it's at Village of Hope, and go through a little budgeting of where they're at and where do they see themselves in 6 months.
That's really interesting. I can imagine that you might get a little bit of pushback.
I do. I get it sometimes from the business community and from the clients because they're like, I have nothing. I can't budget. I have no money. But I don't believe that at all. It doesn't matter whether you're on social assistance or whether you have a good job. You should always know what's in your account, what's coming in and what's going out. And that way those emergency, disconnection notices from hydro, we can deal with before that happens, right?
Yeah, I think that's very important is have some awareness of what's coming in
Yeah.
and where it's going because I often talk about this, Cheryl, is that we are subconscious human beings
Yeah.
and we often are emotional human beings. And
Yeah.
so we have to raise that awareness of where that
Yeah.
money is going.
And I think it's really easy nowadays with tap and with visas and everything else. We
Absolutely.
really need to watch what's in our account and what's coming out.
Yeah. Well, we're going to take a quick break and we'll
Wonderful.
continue this conversation. We'll be right back.
Absolutely.
Welcome back. Cheryl, we've been talking about budgeting, and maybe you can share some of the advice that you give to the people that come to the food bank because I think a common misconception is I don't need to do this. I just need
Mhm.
the money. And yet when you hand someone money and they don't know how to manage it, I feel like there's a missed opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we do different programs, rent subsidy, utility subsidies, and that. And people come in sometimes owing all this money, and for us to help them even with half, how are they going to come up with that half? So we want to make sure too that our donors' monies are going towards a family's home that's really going to make a difference. So working with them, we look at where they're at. Okay, where can they kind of cut back a bit? So very confidentially, we meet with them and everything else. And we say, okay, I won't mention any business names, but maybe you
Mhm.
don't want the movie channels. Maybe you don't watch this. Where can we shave it back, even for 6 months to save that? But we also really encourage them to open up an extra savings account. And I've actually physically gone with them to the bank to open it up so the bank understands what we're doing. It's so it doesn't show up on their, on their online banking or that. And just $10 every time they get there, whether it's social assistance or whether it's a pay. Some people have done it $100 every 2 weeks. And they come to me 6 months later and say, wow, it's so nice to know that I have
Yeah.
this little bit of money for maybe a car repair or something
Pay
else. But
yourself first. That's the concept,
absolutely.
right? Because when you don't
Yeah.
see it, you don't miss it.
Yeah, and I think that I always tell people, one lady was saying her husband goes to, gets a coffee every day. That's understandably, that's fine. But I say, you know what? If you went and you bought that great bag of coffee, you made a coffee every day, at the end of the month, it's $75, $80. And that's sometimes the cost of a utility bill. So we definitely want to ensure that, our families have heat and hydro and everything. But they got to kind of meet us halfway. So yes, I will help out with rent subsidy and that, but they also have to sit down and say, okay, where can we cut back? And many times when they look at their own bank statement, they say, I can't believe I spent that much money on that. I
Yeah.
can't believe I spent that. And so after 3 months, if they can save that almost half of their budget with those miscellaneous costs, they get a $100 grocery card at our local store. So it's a real
Ah,
incentive
so
for
there's an
them too.
incentive. Yeah.
Absolutely. And many of the clients say, Cheryl, I think I'm ready to sit down and do budgeting again. And that's been so good. And one story I was telling you just prior to the show, I did budgeting with a lady last week, and now she called me yesterday and said, Cheryl, I think I'm going to have an issue in February with my rent, and I'm scared for myself and my 3 children.
So really looking ahead.
Looking ahead,
Important.
and I
Yeah.
haven't seen that in the past, but now that we've almost gone through all 1,500 individuals budgeting through Village of Hope, I'm getting that feedback now, and people are so happy, and our donors are happy because they see we're not just giving out money, we're not just giving out food, but we're really impacting because everybody that comes in has their own story, and everybody has the opportunity to move forward,
Yeah.
right?
So for those watching
Yeah,
and they want to support food
yeah,
banks and they want to support Village
yeah,
of Hope, and we'll bring up your website.
yeah.
How can they help? And what do they need to know? Because I have to assume that there are often misconceptions as well.
Yeah, first of all, we are a volunteer based charity. So we have almost 108 volunteers right now, very little staff. And so when you donate $1, only 20 cents of that goes towards any admin costs, which so we're very low. We ensure that the money, when you donate towards, our budgeting program or our rent subsidy program, that money is allocated for that program. We want to make sure that the money goes in, goes out, but goes out to the people that are really making a difference. As I say earlier, 72% of our families are the working poor. So we really want to help them continue to work, but also get them beyond. And, when those people come in, down a year down the road and they donate that $100 because we help them for a short period of time, it's so satisfying, not just to myself, but to our volunteers when we see those, everybody, young or old, seniors or families or single men or anything, when they move beyond that. And that's what we're there for. So donors food, we're fortunate to have, freezers and coolers that, yes, we ask for a lot of canned food for those
Yeah,
families.
typically it's canned food that's donated, but you
Yeah.
need fresh food, don't you?
Absolutely.
Fresh and frozen?
Potatoes, carrots, fresh or frozen. We have the opportunity and we have the space to have it. And with the large turnover of food, we'll make sure that it gets into the hands of those that need it.
Okay. Do they, I know we only have about 20
Yeah.
seconds left. Do they need to call ahead to know what type of fresh food that they would donate?
They
or-
certainly could, but anything helps. Anything from broccoli to oranges to potatoes. We'll take anything. Everybody appreciates it. So,
Okay, Cheryl, we really appreciate you coming in
yeah.
today.
Thank you. Thank
Thanks
you so much for having me.
Stay put, because when we come back, we'll talk about the state of charitable giving in Canada in light of a looming recession.